Hey there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kevin and I am based in Southern California, particularly North County, San Diego. So the goal of this channel is basically for it to be an outlet for me for a few of my hobbies and to share kind of what I'm up to in those hobbies. For this particular episode, we'll be talking a little bit about fragrance at the beginning, and then most of the rest of the episode will be about knitting, so that will take up the bulk of this video. So to start, I will be talking about fragrance, like I said, which means that for anyone who tuned in to hear about knitting, please feel free to skip ahead. I will have timestamps in this video, but I do also welcome you to please listen in on the fragrance section, because you may be surprised. If you're not into fragrance, maybe this is something that you could potentially be into. And if you are into fragrance, well then you've come to the right place. So to start here with fragrance, I will be talking about my scent of the day. The fragrance that I decided to wear today is Ambre Russe by Parfum d'Empire, which is this specific fragrance right here. Parfum d'Empire was created by an individual named Marc-Antoine Corticchiato, who also is the in-house perfumer for the brand. So very cool. Ambre Russe specifically is a very special amber, in my opinion. In a world where there are so many different kinds of ambers, I feel like this one really stands out. Oftentimes, what I get from amber are kind of heavier notes, very deep and rich and resinous. And don't get me wrong, Ambre Russe is a lot of those things. It's certainly a, boozy and warm fragrance. But the reason I think it's a little different from all the other ambers out there is that it has a very kind of aromatic and lightly spicy, lightly sweet characteristic that to me just makes it feel more wearable throughout the year. Whereas most ambers tend to be more suitable for maybe the fall or winter. And I don't tend to be the type of person who thinks that fragrances belong in any specific season. But for me personally, when I wear this fragrance, I feel like depending on how much you apply, it can be suitable even through like the early summer. And it won't be cloying, and it won't be overwhelming, and it won't give you a headache. And it'll still feel pretty appropriate, even in warmer months. So Ambre Russe, like I was saying, spicy, aromatic. It has cinnamon, coriander, and tea. Those notes give this amber a little bit more dimension and some depth, and I really love that. There's a lot more happening in this amber, and I think it's very unexpected. At least for me, it was an amber that I didn't expect to really love. I'd heard a lot of great things about it, but it wasn't until I got my nose on it that I truly started to appreciate it. Let me just compare this to a couple famous ambers out there, like Ambre Sultan by Serge Lutens, or maybe Grand Soir by Maison Francis Kurkdjian. Those are two very well-renowned ambers, and I feel that even though Ambre Russe has qualities that are similar because they belong to the same family, it's still a fragrance that even if you have those two, it wouldn't hurt to have Ambre Russe in your collection. So again, it's a not very heavy fragrance. It's more airy than other ambers that you may have experienced or run into. And to me, it's just overall very pleasant and very easy on the nose. So for those of you in the knitting world who tuned in to this fragrance segment, I appreciate you listening in. And I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts about how fragrance and knitting go a little bit hand in hand with one another. at least the way I experience fragrance, I think of it as a way, a tool to either mirror the way I'm feeling, or to set the stage for the way I would like to feel. So for example, if I'm feeling maybe a little anxious, or you know, just a little, yeah, just kind of anxious, not feeling all there, maybe I'll reach for a fragrance that gives me a sense of calm, makes me feel a little grounded, because I really do believe that, you know, our senses affect our emotions. So, and fragrance is tied to our olfactory senses, and so there is an impact on our emotions that fragrance can have. For me, you know, if I were, for example, looking for something energizing on the flip side, right? I could reach for something like that. There are fragrances of all kinds out there, which makes it really fun, and which is why I try to collect fragrances. So I think going forward in a lot of my videos, I will continue to maybe feature my scent of the day in the beginning, and then segue into the other segments of the video. And speaking of subsequent segments, knitting, that's going to be the bulk of this video. I think that, you know, when we're knitting, we're sitting down, we're just chilling, we got our needles in our hands, spraying a little fragrance on each arm, just a little bit, so you can catch a whiff of it, you get wafts of it as you're knitting. It's a fun experience. I really love it. Like, you put something that smells nice, and to me, it just adds to the overall experience. So I really enjoy it. I think it enhances the knitting experience, and so I encourage you to try out fragrances. And what I often hear is that people either feel like fragrance is overwhelming, or they just don't like how fragrance smells. But again, there are thousands of fragrances out there. A lot of what you may find at the mall, or like at a Sephora or at a Macy's, is just the tiniest fraction of what's really available out there. Like, I would say the fragrances that you find in the mainstream are designed to be a specific way, and a lot of them are quite similar in the way that they're formulated. So I would encourage you to maybe explore a niche fragrance store where they stock more artisanal, niche, kind of artistic brands that like to push the boundaries and maybe use higher level ingredients. It might open your nose to other experiences and to fragrances that you actually like and enjoy, and could be a gateway into this a really fun hobby that goes in hand with knitting. So that concludes my little tangent about fragrances, because I just love it, and I would love other people to get into it as well. So without further ado, we will now begin the knitting segment of this video, and I will start this off with finished objects as usual. The only finished object that I have for this year so far is the Beaconhead Slipover by Raw Wool Company, and it's actually this one that I'm wearing right here in this brown color. I really love it. It was a pretty quick knit because obviously there are no sleeves, so I didn't have to go through that whole process. The Beaconhead Slipover is a bottom-up construction, the first one that I've done, and honestly, when I was going through it, I was a little bit nervous because I'd always heard that for most people, the preference would be to do a top-down construction, just because you are able to kind of figure out the length, or at least control the length of the garment overall, and maybe tailor it more easily. So I was worried that I'd get through all the way to the to the top of the garment and then realized at the very end that I hadn't knit enough in the body, which thankfully was not the case here. This was a very positive experience for me. The pattern was fairly easy to follow. I would say that it does not hold your hand so much, at least. I'm used to PetiteKnit patterns where there is a lot of hand holding and a lot of milestones and kind of benchmarking in the pattern. It kind of spells out all the stitches that you have, but this one was less of that, but still very, very easy to follow. So highly recommend it. I did make a couple modifications to this pattern. I did size down from the recommended needle size for the ribbing. So I think in the pattern it calls for 3.5 millimeter needles. I used 3.25 millimeter needles, which I don't think made too much of a difference, but enough for me to notice because I tend to prefer more of a cinched hem and just kind of tighter ribbing. So I don't regret that. I think it turned out well. It's kind of helped create the silhouette that I was hoping for in this slipover, so I'm very happy with it. And then the other modification I made was to do, instead of a rolled neck, I did a folded neckband here. And that's truly a matter of personal preference. I tend to like the plush kind of texture that you can get from the folded neckband. And honestly, I just find it really satisfying to do the folded neckband. I know it's a lot more ribbing to do, but I enjoy doing the extra rows of ribbing and then just folding it over and sewing it in on the wrong side. So yeah, very pleasant experience. I'm really, really happy with the garment. I think it's going to be a very versatile and neutral piece that I can use for layering here in Southern California. So happy, very happy with it. Let me kind of talk a little bit about the yarn that I used here. It was Cashmere Merino Bloom by Purl Soho in the colorway Black Coffee. And this is a really soft yarn. It was very pleasant to work with. I didn't find anything particularly challenging with this yarn. It is 75% extra fine merino and 25% cashmere. So as you can imagine, very soft, very plush. It has a little bit of a halo effect because of the cashmere. My only kind of concern at the beginning when I had first read reviews about this yarn was that it could potentially be a pill monster. So I was thinking, I know merino has a reputation for being highly prone to pilling. However, I have found that this has not pilled too much at this point, and granted, I haven't really worn it tremendously, so that's still to be determined with more wear, but so far, no real pilling issues. And maybe part of that is because this is a vest, a sleeveless garment, and so there isn't as much friction or as much wear in the typical areas, like maybe down here, where if you have a sleeve, you'll see a lot of pilling under the sleeve, or like right here where the sleeve would meet the body. That's not the case with this garment, so that's not something I can really report on, but I will report on whether or not I see pilling in other parts of this garment. Again, so far, so good. So that is my only FO for the year so far, which means we will now move into whips. Starting off with the Olga Sweater, which I had already talked about in a previous video. The Olga Sweater by PetiteKnit. This is a sweater that I'm really excited to finish, and I'm really excited about this particular project that I'm working on here because I'm really happy with the yarn. Let me just show you guys how it's looking so far. I've already split for sleeves, so quite a bit of progress on this, as you can see. I just love it. And I really like the way this pattern is done because there really aren't too many ends to weave in. You kind of catch the yarn with each stripe at the end of each row when you switch. So you're not like breaking the yarn with each stripe. So it's a very manageable knit in that sense. I'm not dreading the final product and having like so many ends to weave in. That won't be the case here, thankfully. But the reason I have had these, I've been needles down on this Olga sweater for now is because when I had first decided to take on this project, I told my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law is Mel at Big Little Yarn Co. She's an indie yarn dyer based in Japan. She's really cool, and she is my knitting idol. She's been knitting for a very long time, and I've always admired how she could be out in the wild just knitting like on a train or in the car and always having something fun to do and always having projects that, you know, she's working on. So I'm happy to be kind of following in her footsteps in that way. So she was excited when I mentioned that I wanted to do the Olga sweater, and she suggested that we do a buddy knit. Unfortunately, I got carried away and I started without even being like, oh, let's when do we want to start? I didn't coordinate anything really. So I had gotten this far already, split for sleeves, and I was like, hey, how's it going? And apparently she hadn't quite started yet because she has a bunch of other stuff going on. I think her shop, she was working on a like an update for her shop to do a new release. So obviously not as much time to work on this new project. So I was like, oh, I totally jumped the gun on this. Let me put this down, set it aside, and wait until she starts. So that's where we are on this. I'm in a holding pattern on the Olga sweater and just waiting for her to kind of catch up to where I am, and then we can continue on the project together. So that'll be really fun. The Olga sweater that I'm working on, I just really am excited for how this is going to turn out in terms of like the yarn I'm using. So for these stripes, I have these two. You can see one is like really fuzzy, and that one is kind of a light blue brushed Suri. It's the brushed Suri DK by BlueSky Fibers in a very kind of baby blue, like pale baby blue, I would say. And then the other striping here, this is, it's got like a little bit of brown, a little bit of blue in it, but it's really beautiful. It is the Marla yarn by Manos del Uruguay, which is a superwash merino. And I think these two yarns really kind of play off of each other really well. I love the variety of texture that I'm going to get in this garment with the kind of fluffy, airy Suri, and then the kind of smoother merino contrasting that. So very excited about how this garment's gonna turn out, how it's gonna drape. And I know that the Olga sweater is just such a popular pattern these days, and it's so fun seeing everybody's like take on what colors they're using, what combinations. And everything I've seen so far has just been amazing. I don't think there's any way to really go wrong with the Olga sweater. So can't wait to finish that project for sure. The next whip that I'm working on in lieu of the Olga is another petite pattern and petite knit pattern, and it is the Eva Cardigan by PetiteKnit. And here it is so far. I am currently working on the yoke and working through the raglan increases and the V-neck increases. So yeah, this one is going really well. I haven't ever done a cardigan pattern, and I've also never done anything that's V-neck. So these are both firsts for me, and it's going really well. But I think that's also because this is a petite knit pattern, and I'm used to the way she does her patterns, and it's been very easy to follow. There hasn't been anything too surprising here so far, so I'm having a great time knitting this one. The yarn I'm using for it is a combination of a, let's see, I have these two actually that I can show you. One is the Loco DK, which is a superwash merino, and I'm holding it together with Knitting for Olive's Dusty Violet. And together, you know, I wasn't sure exactly how this was going to turn out, just because I hadn't originally bought this yarn with the Eva Cardigan in mind. I kind of decided later that I wanted to do an Eva Cardigan, and then found these two yarns and thought maybe they'd be a good fit. But pleasantly surprised to see that the Mohair really kind of works well with this superwash merino, this exact colorway here, because they have this DK yarn has a little bit of that kind of violet hue to it, kind of a muted purple color, and I did do a swatch for this just to confirm that I was happy with the colorway, and yeah, it turned out really nice. You can see that the DK yarn is still coming through. I don't know if it's going to focus or not, but yeah, I think that the Mohair just mutes a little bit of the additional colors here, but not in a way that I wasn't happy about. And it just adds a lot of fluff and maybe makes it a little bit more homogeneous. So yeah, I think it came out to be a beautiful fabric, and I like the way it blocked. And I'm happy to see the Eva Cardigan taking shape here. On the topic of swatches, actually, I did want to go on a little bit of a tangent about swatches, because originally when I first got into the hobby, I was just very doubtful that swatches were necessary, despite the fact that I would hear people all the time talk about how important it is to swatch, to do a gauge swatch. To me, it always felt like such a chore, like why can't I just cast on and start this project and, you know, get this thing going? Why do I have to knit up a tiny square, you know? And I'm sure many of you can probably relate to that sentiment, but I am a changed man. Like, I truly feel that swatches are very important, and I am at a point now where I actually enjoy it. And the reason for that is because I think swatches not only help you identify whether or not the size that you'll ultimately make is kind of like conforms to the pattern, but also it helps you really decide if the yarns you're picking are the right yarns. How do I say this? If the yarns you're using will become what you envision them to be originally. So, for example, this swatch, this Loco and Mohair, this Loco Knitting for Olive swatch that I did, if I didn't block this first, I would never have known how this fabric would ultimately, you know, behave, or how it would drape, how soft would it be. It would be a gamble at that point. Like, you never know if it's going to be what you want, and you could waste plenty of time and energy, and you could just be, you know, heading towards heartbreak by completing a whole project and not being happy with it at the end. And I think a swatch is just one way to avoid all that. So, you know, that's not to say that you can swatch and it'll always be what you want it to be. That's certainly not the case, but swatching helps you kind of take a step towards just, you know, being closer to what you want it to be and to your expectations. So yeah, I actually don't mind swatching at all anymore. I actually enjoy it, and I actually really want to do more swatches. Like, there's some yarn sitting in my stash right now that I'm like, how would those two look, if I held them together, let me just do a quick swatch, and you could be surprised. You do a swatch for a couple yarns that you're not too inspired about, and you may actually like it once you do a swatch. So again, swatches, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Now, so yeah, that pretty much concludes my whips. I will now move on to my future cast-ons. And before I dive into what my near-term plans here with knitting are, I do want to say I had a Make 9 in my previous video. That was a kind of like a loose Make 9. I definitely want to make at least 9 things this year, but I am finding that now that I'm a little bit more active on Ravelry and I'm really taking the steps to make sure my stash is updated, make sure my queue is updated, and so I can kind of organize everything. But I am finding that my queue just keeps, number one, it keeps growing, and number two, it keeps changing. So, and this is like a daily thing. I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but my queue is shuffling itself. And by itself, I mean by me clicking the change order button. My queue just keeps changing. I hope I will just make a decision someday, but regardless, let me just kind of share my top 3 with the disclaimer that these are subject to change. So first and foremost, and this is one that I will definitely make because it's not for me. This is one that I promised to make for my husband Louis. This is the In Stillness 2 sweater by Alicia Plummer, and I will be knitting this in Cascade 220 superwash. This is a superwash merino yarn, and the reason I'm using this is because it's going to be low maintenance. He can chuck it in the wash and it should be fine. Louis is not as particular about how he kind of like cares for garments and clothes in general. So I just know that whatever I make for him needs to be very easy to maintain and to clean and won't be too fussy. So we've landed at that, and I think it's a great pattern. I really like the details on it. I think it's going to be fairly straightforward as well. Yeah, and I don't think it'll take super long, but I think I like the detail on the yoke a lot. That texture is nice, and it looks like a very kind of simple silhouette that my husband can wear all the time and enjoy. So yeah, that is the first planned cast on for the year for Louis. The second future cast on that I have is for me. It'll be the Flocon Slipover, and it's a design by Yamamuro. I think I have a couple other designs on my queue by Yamamuro. I just really like the designs. There's like simplicity to them, but also like simplicity in the silhouette, but like really fun details in the pattern itself that I really appreciate. So yeah, the Flocon Slipover, great texture on the body portion of it. And I just like a slipover. I know I just did this slipover recently, but I'm not over it, and so I want to knit another one. The Flocon Slipover is a sport weight garment. I will be knitting it. Actually, I have the yarns right here. I will be using de Rerum Natura's Ulysse in this kind of like light gray colorway. And I don't know why the camera's not focusing, but it is what it is. And then I will be holding it together with their mohair called Berenice in kind of like a darker gray. Oh, and I forgot to mention actually, this light gray has some flecks of like a very kind of grayish blue in it. So I really like that. I think that'll help it be not so much of a stark contrast. Like this yarn will have a little bit of this color in it to kind of tie it all together. So very excited. And I think it's actually going to turn out similar in terms of color to what's shown in the pattern photo. Maybe a bit darker just because the mohair I picked is the dark one, and I know that that's probably going to be a prominent color, but very excited for it and can't wait to start this project. And then the third and final cast on that I'm planning in the near future is the Pelica Vest by Rosa Pomar. I just really like, again, I like a vest, and maybe that's because I'm in Southern California. Out here, the weather never really gets too cold where I'm gonna always be like bundled up. Like it's not gonna snow here in San Diego. So a vest is really handy. It's something that I can wear and leave on and maybe just have other layers underneath. If it's extra chilly, like I can have, you know, maybe a light long sleeve sweater or shirt, or maybe even just a t-shirt if it's a little bit chilly. But yeah, there's a lot of utility with vests here in Southern California. So for my Pelica vest, I plan to use Rosa Pomar's Brusca yarn, which is the recommended yarn, in the colorway C573, which is kind of an olive green. I was agonizing forever on which yarn or which colorway to use for this vest, because there are so many good ones in this like particular yarn, this Brusca yarn. I wasn't sure if I wanted something like more neutral, like a gray, or maybe something a little bit more out there, like an orange. So I kind of settled on olive green because I think that hits right in between, where it's not like too boring of a neutral, but not too out there, where it's not too statement. So very happy with the color I ultimately selected. The Pelica vest looks like it has a little bit more structure. It's a worsted weight garment. I think it's going to be great. I love the simple silhouette, and I can see myself styling this many ways, and I think it's going to fit into my wardrobe pretty well. It'll be great for layering with all kinds of pieces that I already have. So yeah, that pretty much concludes everything I have going on and that will be going on in my knitting world. So I really appreciate you tuning in to my channel and taking the time to watch this rambling session. If you tuned in for both segments, if you watched the fragrance part of this, appreciate you. And then if you just watch the knitting, well, that's fine too. Maybe one of these days you'll tune into the fragrance stuff too. It's never too late. But again, thank you so much for watching. I will have updates and more kind of videos and content about everything that I'm knitting, all my kind of fragrance related stuff too, on my Instagram, which I will link below. So until next time, thank you very much.